Yeah, give a round of applause.
That's right.
And next, we're going to hear rebuttal testimony from the bigger, can you tell what to do for a day job? From the Biggers children in the order on the screen. Brian?
He's right over here.
There he is, sorry.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming. I hope I don't mess up this phone because it'll just be a big fat mess if I do. So I want you to know, just right off the bat, that my dad is not dead. Today, he is more alive than he has ever been. John 11:26, in there Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me will have life, even though they die. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Amen. So even though his body is gone, and because he believed in Jesus Christ, that he was God's son, Dad is now receiving his reward as a good and faithful servant. Amen. In the twinkling of an eye, we will all be transformed. And that's where he is. He is sleeping in an everlasting bliss with a new and perfect body waiting for the return of Jesus. These last couple of weeks, I've been reminded of the old guard, the men and women who have already been in the war. They have the scars from experience and battles they have fought, and fighting alongside them are the newer, fresher, younger soldiers, yet inexperienced in battle. It is the old guard's calling to teach the young how things are done, how to survive battle, and how to win. And they might do this by telling stories, but more often than not, it's done by example. The younger watching the old, how to navigate through life's ups and downs and adventures. And my dad, from the time I can remember, was one of the members of the old guard, teaching me the way to be a man, a son, a brother, a husband, a community member, and a follower of Jesus. Amen. These are a few of the things that he taught me. He taught me how to fish. Now this comes in handy when your little sister thinks she can come to Dinky Creek and challenge you to catch more fish, even though she has a 2-hour head start. But Dad taught me that sometimes it's the attention to details and experience that can make the difference in an outcome. And so needless to say, she had no chance and never challenged me again on that trip. Dad taught me how to lead worship in church and to sing with confidence. Sing loud, like you mean it. You shouldn't need a microphone. And if you pitch a song incorrectly, just stop and repitch it. It's better to lead and sing in a key that you and everybody else can handle. And it's better just to admit you made a mistake, correct it, and then move on. Dad spent many years as an umpire in local softball leagues, little league, high school, and college. He had a reputation of being a very good umpire who was fair and knew the rules of the game. Once I went with him as a little kid as he umpired at a local softball game. I played in the park because I really wasn't interested in the game. But after the game, I heard about something that had happened during the game. Apparently, some lady was really upset with a call Dad had made and even went to some of the league officials to complain about his poor umpiring, that he was not a good individual to have out there, as he had been swearing and cussing and carrying on like nobody she'd ever seen. And so one official that was there, he just raised his hand to her and said, "Stop right there." Said, "If you had brought this up about any other individual umpire, I might have listened to you. But you were accusing one of the very best umpires in our area with a solid reputation as a person who never swears and carries on as you say. He is a good man." I learned that day, reputation is everything. He taught me how to dig a ditch. When we were in high school and junior high, our church would go with some other churches from Fresno, and we would go down to Ensenada to the orphanage down there, and we would build bricks. It was a blast. And but one day, I was about a freshman in high school, Dad comes and he pulls me away from my friends, and he takes me to the bottom of this little hill, and he hands me a pitchfork and 2 gloves. And he said, I want you to dig a ditch from here to there. And it was like 30 yards. And he said, I want that ditch to be this wide and that deep. And I had no idea. I'd never worked with a pickaxe before. And I thought, all right, whatever. Well, in Mexico, digging a ditch this wide and this deep for 30 yards is like digging through concrete that's at least this wide and this deep for that 30 yards. It was hard work. And in about 15 minutes, I realized what hard work it was. And so I sweated and sweated. I was getting wore out. But my dad had given me a job to do. And after about an hour and a half or 2 hours of doing that job, I looked up and saw my friends leaving where they were making bricks, heading to the lunch line. And I wanted to go, but I didn't because my dad had given me a job to do. And so I continued to pound into that dirt and try to make this trench for him. And pretty soon he came by and he looked at the ditch that I had gotten done with. I didn't finish the whole thing, but he said, that's pretty good. Why don't you go eat some lunch now? And I gave him the stuff, and I was just glad to be done with it. But I learned that day, some work is just difficult and hard, and you're gonna sweat. But the end result is usually worth the effort that you put in. And getting praise from my dad was everything. And speaking of hard work, I remember the day the neurologist came into Dad's hospital room after looking at a CT scan and telling him, Mr. Biggers, you're never going to walk again. Oops. Never say never to Dad. So with the help of our strong, loving, and courageous mother, he went to physical therapy. And he worked hard in those early days. Within a year, he was pretty mobile using a walker, defying this walking thing. He was able to move his legs some, but trying to be mobile was very hard work. But he continued to try. I came to visit Mom and Dad that year at the cabin. And one morning, I just come back from fishing at the creek and was on the front porch looking in the kitchen window, watching Dad fix some breakfast and coffee. He didn't hear me walk up, and I didn't say anything. I was just right outside the kitchen window. He just didn't know I was there, and I just wanted to watch my dad for a minute. He was at the sink, and using his walker, slowly grabbed his plate and his coffee and moved in this direction over to the table. It was a tight space, and the walker was just so difficult to work with, and he was having such a hard time with his legs. It just took a lot of effort to go from the sink to the table. But he finally got there. He just went slowly and methodically. He didn't spill anything, and he got all the way over there. And he puts his plate and coffee cup down, and he realizes he left his fork back over at the sink. So, mind you, I'm right outside the window, right here. And I'm watching him, and I watch him turn around, and he sees that disappointment, that displeasure of needing to spend that extra energy to try to get back over there just to get a fork. So, using the walker, he slowly began to turn, but it was just difficult to navigate with that walker. And how these last 8 years have tortured him, not being able to move about as he did. Anyway, he turns around and he's looking, and that's just going to be too. You can see on his face, and all of a sudden he just starts thinking. You can see on his face him thinking, how can I do this with less energy? How can I get over there and get back without just this, hate this walker. And so he slowly turns, and he's got one hand on the walker now, and he takes another step with this really bad leg, and he lets go of the walker. My dad's standing there. First time he's stood in a year. He's standing there, and I want to say something, but I'm afraid I might scare him, so he might fall. And he takes a step, shuffles the bad one, takes a step, shuffles the grabs the fork, and you could see on his face this sense of accomplishment, and he was just so excited about what he had just done. He didn't fall as everybody thought he would. So he turns around and slowly and carefully and methodically walks back to the table and to his walker. Tears were in my eyes at this moment. It was at this time that I finally revealed my presence outside the kitchen window, revealing that I had just witnessed his miracle. I said to him, as he might say to me in a similar circumstance, "Well, that was pretty good." He jerked around very quickly, startled by my presence, and when he realized that we had just shared a big moment together, I got one of those big Bob Bigger smiles. He and Mom taught me that marriage is forever and to honor your vows and your spouse. This means forever, and this means always. I'm sure that my grandparents had difficult times during their marriage, and I'm sure my mom and dad did too, but I never saw it. His parents were married for over 50 years, and Mom and Dad have been married for, how long were you married? 62 years. Marriage is forever. Honor your vows and your spouse. He taught me to say what you mean and mean what you say. When I was growing up, I had many errors in judgment, and he would come to me, usually pretty mad, gritting his teeth as he talked, angry, and told me what I had done wrong, why it was wrong, and here's your punishment. So it was pretty short, wasn't so sweet, but in those times growing up, I came to realize that you have to have established morals and convictions in how you're going to live your life and how you're going to treat others. So Dad, before his aneurysm, he was pretty active. He loved to hike and fish and repair stuff and help other people. Excuse me. And when he was in high school and college, he was a runner. So when remembering Dad, let us also remember Hebrews 12, 1 through 3. So let us run the race before us and never give up. We should remove from our lives anything that would get in the way and the sin that easily holds us back. Look only to Jesus, the one who began our faith and makes it perfect. Dad ran a good race. And in that race, as an old guard, he has passed the baton to me and to everyone else he came in contact with. It is now to us to continue the race through life, becoming ourselves the old guard, passing the baton to others through our stories and the way we conduct ourselves. Jesus said, "Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life. He does not come into the judgment, but has passed from death into life."
Amen.
Ooh, there's a lot of people. I'm affectionately known as mortgage number 2. Brian's number 1, and it just gets more expensive as you go down. The high chair is a legacy. Both of my sons were fed in that high chair as well. So Oliver used to fit in that. Track is a legacy. These are just some of the things that have come up that I've heard other people say, but my sons also ran track. In fact, my oldest son got a scholarship to Brown University running track as well. So my dad did lead the way. How appropriate to memorialize him on this Father's Day weekend. What a special day. Today I'd like to talk to you about what my father means to me. What comes to my mind when I think of my dad are words that I've heard previously from some of the other speakers here, my brother. Perseverance, generosity, and a patriarch. Perseverance, I want to talk about that again because he was unwavering about his love for God, his faith, his family, and accepting challenge. My husband Carrie and I were talking about how amazed we were at the level at which my dad was able just to hang on to life, and got to thinking, how did he do it? What was his inner strength? And I thought back, there's so many things that I know that my siblings could say, and that I would say, and you're probably going to hear repeated stories, but I think back to when we lived in Lancaster on Avenue L, and he woke up every morning at 5 a.m., walked down a dusty driveway, stood at a bus stop in the heat, both ways, rode a bus to an isolated area, which was the rocket site at Edwards Air Force Base, for 1 hour, doing a job that I didn't understand what he did for about 30 years. Seriously. This is the same perseverance he had for life at every challenge he faced. I did work one summer as an intern there with him, and then I realized what discipline it took every day. I was so glad the summer was over. Perseverance, he showed me the discipline of sticking to things, like feeding animals daily and caring for them properly, going to college, teaching as a profession. When I didn't think I could make it 1 year, I am now on 26. Like insisting on planting a productive garden and orchard in the middle of the Mojave Desert. Maybe that's why I don't give up on things easily. Some people may call it stubbornness. I call it grit, and that is what he had. The second word that comes to mind about my dad is generosity. As a provider and love for his family, we always had what we needed. Not just food and clothing, but when we were in sports, he always bought the best athletic wear and equipment. When I ran track, he went out and bought the spikes for me. He showed me which ones I should have. In volleyball, he bought the best shoes and sent me to camps. In softball, the best glove, and even helped me break it in. That was really amazing. It even surprised me. He not only bought the stuff, but he was generous with his time. When my dad came to my games, it was seriously special. My mom, I could count on. She was there. But I did perk up when my dad came and gave a better effort because he was there. He was incredibly supportive before women's sports were popular. In fact, he encouraged me to continue to play in college and helped me write a letter for a scholarship, which I did, and I did play, thanks to him. His generosity continued in my life as he and my mom gave Carrie and I a beautiful wedding. This I have thanked him for every year for 35 years. 34, soon to be 35 on June 30th. Because of his example as a husband and partner and a team player with my mom, I've been able to see the strength and love with God in a marriage. Generosity continues. It continued with my children. Besides all the camps at Dinky Creek and the visits, he sent when we lived in Fresno, he bought a swing set for Luke and Oliver. It came in a box. He must have seen Carrie's eyes upon knowing the engineering feat that was about to have to happen to put that swing set up. No words were said. My dad opened the box and proceeded to put together the whole thing, functional, in about 3 hours. Something Carrie said would take him about 3 weeks, give or take. When the boys graduated from high school, he was there, experiencing the Virginia heat and humidity, which was not his favorite, and gave them both computers to take to college because he knew what it took to be successful. And they both are. When Fresno State won championships, he sent T-shirts, hats, and shirts to Carrie and jackets because they were both alumni, something that Carrie will always treasure and never throw away or get rid of. As a patriarch, my dad was a faithful leader, teacher, and father. He again showed me to stay the course. In the last year, I sought his advice more than the previous 58 years. I valued his words, where before I may have been dismissive. Sometimes when we were together, there were no words said. I valued that too, as well as the classic thumbs up gesture from Bob Biggers. In closing, I was lucky enough to visit him about 6 weeks ago before his last hospital visit, right before his 86th birthday, right before he died, and it was really special. I gave him, it was his birthday, and so I thought, what can I give my dad that's just not a normal birthday card? So thinking outside the box, like Bob Biggers might, I gave him a card with an eggplant on it, because that seemed appropriate for him. I did come to the house and they did have eggplant in the refrigerator, so it's not as strange as you might think. I wrote a list of things that I appreciated about my dad, and I sat down in front of him. I said, Dad, I want to read you the card that I wrote for you. Some of the things that I appreciated that you did for me in life that I don't know if I ever told you. Stop that. So he just smiled and just kept listening, and I sat right in front of him, and I read the things that I'm telling you today, with a few other little things. So the next day, I was arranging some pictures that I had gotten brought for him, and I thought he was asleep. And I was arranging a picture on the dresser, and he was to my back, and he said, you know, she's just going to move that. His eyes were still closed. And I said, you're spy listening, aren't you? You're doing that a lot. And he just laid there and gave a big smile. As I was leaving the room, so at that same point, I was leaving the room. And my dad said, hey, Bridge, come back here for a minute. And what I see now as his final desire to spend one last time with his daughter, to feel my love and presence near him, and life, I'm sure. He said, come right over here beside me. This bed is really big. I want to take a nap, and I want you to be here with me. How could I refuse? He said, if we want to talk, we can, or we can just sit quiet. And if we don't want to talk, we don't have to. And I said, okay, Dad. And so I laid there by him, and he patted me on the leg. And I said, I love you, Dad. And he took a nap, but I did not. How could I? The funny story ending from that is that my mother was walking around the house and I saw her kind of pass by the bedroom. So when we woke up, I got up a little bit later, and when she came back in, he said, "Did you get a picture?" And she said, "No, I didn't want to get in trouble." So we staged one. I said, "Mom, take a picture." So we staged it, and I love that picture.